Guten Tag. Ich hoffe, du hast einen schönen Sonntag. Yes, good day. I hope you're having a great Sunday. I don't know, am I allowed to wear green in the virtual world? Because I know in Grenada there's a thing with green and camouflage. But I am specifically wearing the green because today I'm in a very combative mode. And I am going to be laying down the verbal blows on everyone. So, let's get back to the Clozier project, which is pretty much in a disastrous stage right now. But the thing about it, everyone seems to be pointing the finger at the Prime Minister and the administration. And that's understandable. By their very position, they do indeed deserve some blame. But I must say, all of the responsibility does not lie with them. And in many respects, you Grenadians collectively are responsible. Many of you who was involved in this has disgraced yourself. You have disgraced Grenada, and in some respect, you have made us a laughingstock regionally and internationally. So heck yeah, I'm pissed. So let's break down this whole capital projects and how things should actually work. First and foremost, I would expect for this roadway retaining wall project in Clozier that there would have been some sort of design plans or design drawings for the project. Hopefully that was done. So hopefully the contractor would have had some sort of design plans for this project that would have been done by a civil engineer or a geostructural engineer. And this would have been reviewed by the Ministry of Infrastructure or your Public Works Department or your MIT or whatever, whoever is responsible for reviewing these types of designs. So hopefully, in consideration for the design, the area of the project would have been surveyed and all the water paths and all the springs and all the possibility of wetlands and stuff and the drainage pattern in the area would have been shown on the base map survey drawings, which the engineer would have used to create his design plans. So hopefully, in the creation of those design plans, the engineer would have taken into consideration that there's, water in the area and this might have to be diverted during construction, or some sort of mitigating action would have been taken to avoid problems during construction. All of this would be considered in the design plans and should be shown in the design plans. Even in the design of the retaining wall, drainage will be considered and how to divert water away from the project area so that the integrity of the construction is not affected in the future. So there are a couple of things to consider in the design phase of the project. We have to consider traffic movement. Can we actually do this project and at the same time continue traffic flow in the project area? That's something that has to be considered. Obviously, that should not have been done in this case. So obviously, there should have been some sort of work zone traffic control during the construction process. So after these design plans are done, then there's a tendering process. And whoever wins the bid hopefully can use these contract documents or design documents or drawings to complete the project. So the design and construction project should be so structured that there is safety during construction, things are delivered on time and on budget. And to help with all this safety, the first check and balance is that when the designers create these drawings or plans, it is sent hopefully to Ministry of Public Works or Ministry of Infrastructure or whoever reviews these plans. They would approve the plans to say, okay, well, everything seems okay here and everything is considered and these plans are ready to be given to a contractor to build. So that is the first place where you see there might have been a dereliction of duty. Okay? So it's quite obvious that these plans might have been inadequate because these plans should have shown some sort of temporary shoring during construction. And obviously they didn't because it wasn't done. There was actually no attempt also to divert the water away from the project area. So that was not shown on the plans either. There was also obviously no consideration given to the adjacent property because if that was given, there would have been an attempt to underpin that adjacent property. Or there would have been some sort of requirement to stay a certain amount of feet away from the adjacent property during construction. None of this was done. So it's obvious none of this was on the plan or the contractor ignored if it was on the plan, which I highly, highly doubt. So the reviewers of those plans failed. That is the first line of defense. So while you want to blame the government or blame DECON or blame the administration, So you two have collective responsibility for not ensuring that these plans are done properly. And it's a shame. It's a disgrace. And I know for a fact there should be senior people within, I don't know if it's MIT or Ministry of Infrastructure who review these plans who should have known better. So you too are responsible for this failure. Now, a second line of defense in terms of safety is supervision. So this project should have someone from the ministry representing the government during construction to ensure that things are done according to the design plans. That representative may be, I don't know if it's the CTO or a representative of the CTO, but somebody from the government side has to be on site ensuring that the contractor is doing exactly what is supposed to be done according to the design plans. That second line of defense, again, there is failure because the resident engineer or the engineer from the government side on site should have said, wait. You're building a retaining wall. What's happening to the embankment? Are you going to support it until the retaining wall is finished? What are your plans? What about all that water that's flowing through the site? Are you going to divert the water from the site? What are your plans? That is the second line of defense. That is what the engineer for the government side should have been doing on the site, representing the government's interests, safeguarding the government's interests. That obviously was not done because nobody was there to point and say, wait. Okay, you're building a retaining wall here. What's happening to the embankment? Are you going to support it during construction? Oh, be careful. Don't excavate next to that adjacent property or the house. That may sabotage or undermine that adjacent property. That obviously wasn't done. So there again, there's dereliction of duty. Now, a third line of defense is where whatever the contractor decides to do, he's supposed to send shop drawings, which are drawings, again, which should be reviewed by the Ministry of Infrastructure, whoever is the governing body on these projects, to ensure that these shop drawings, what they do is that they show the government that, hey, this is a retaining wall we're going to build. This is our erection plan. This is our drawings showing how we're actually going to implement the design plans. And those shop drawings are practical erection plans of what the contractor is going to do. So the contractor now has his engineer make up these shop drawings, send it to the governing body, if it's the MIT or the Ministry of Infrastructure. They review it and say, okay, all right, I like what you're doing here. You can do this. That works. Bam, bam, bam. It's approved. And then only then the contractor can continue doing what he plans to do. Now, obviously, that again was not done. More than likely, no shop drawings from the contractor or the contractor's engineer was sent to the Ministry of Infrastructure or the governing body for that project. Again, senior people who should have had experience would have reviewed these shop drawings and said, oh, well, I don't like your plan here, and tweak it a little, make these corrections, send it again for me to review. That obviously wasn't done. So again, we see a third line of defense where the ball was dropped. So again, sadly, ultimately, the responsibility is going to be directed up to the Prime Minister. And sadly, he's not the implementer of policy, but he may be the director of policy. But he depends on the technocrats beneath him to help him, who works with him to assist him, to ensure that his direction and policy is implemented. And that, my friend, may be where the failure is. Because it's obvious, the Prime Minister doesn't have to know everything. He doesn't have to know the technical details of this project. But if he has an idea and a project needs to take place, he has these technocrats who are being paid thousands of dollars, should be able to implement this in a safe, on budget, and timely manner. So what I think here, what I see happening is that a lot of people are using this NDC administration as a meal ticket. That's the facts. They're obviously using this administration as a meal ticket to the detriment of the administration. And they're punks and they're taking advantage of probably the inexperience of the administration. We understand they're all youthful, right? That's the whole premise, right? We know that. But to actually take advantage of these people, that in itself is just bordering on evil. That in itself is just bordering on unpatriotic. Because at the end of the day, this makes the administration look bad. It makes the country look bad and could have devastating consequences in terms of the cost of human life, as we have seen on the Molyneux project. If people want to sit back and laugh and score political cheap points because of their failures, guess what? Collectively, you guys should be ashamed. The senior people who work within the Ministry of Public Works or Ministry of Infrastructure or MIT, you should be ashamed. You should be disgraced. If you have any semblance of conscience within you, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Because in many respects, some of you are being paid to get this done. So basically, you're moving like a bandit. You're being paid and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So, a lot of the problems associated with the site, and it's obviously a complex situation with a lot of water flowing throughout the site, adjacent property at the site, but these are all of the things that needed to be considered before you even start the project. And there is something that's so simple that could have been done on this project to mitigate the problems associated with this project. Something so simple. You could have phased the project. You build a retaining wall, how much? Hundreds of feet long? Guess what? You could have phased the project. You could say, you know what? I'm going to start at one end and do it in sections. I'm going to do an 8 to 10 foot section retaining wall and deal with just that section. Then I'm going to go to the opposite end. All right? While this section is being killed on the left end, I'm going to go to the opposite end. I'm going to do an 8 to 10 foot section. Okay? When the first section is killed, you come back adjacent to that section and you build another 8 to 10 foot section while the other end is being killed. So you could have phased this project and do it in sections, probably even more, 15-foot sections or whatever. That way, you do not destabilize the entire roadway if you had done it in sections. But instead, what do you see happening? They go into the area, bulldoze the whole goddamn section, bulldoze the whole goddamn area, and destabilize the whole roadway. And we know what the result was. So in cases like that, when it's so complex and there's problems associated with the site, you do it in sections. I mean, you look at this and you're just seeing just excavation being done. Excavation. No way. So, for future situations where the site is so complicated, try a phased approach. Section. So the bottom line is this. While ultimately, because of the very position of the Prime Minister and the current administration, they're in charge, they will bear much of the responsibility because of their position, but there is many more people culpable in the situation. And this shows a failure of institutions. Prime Minister would come, Prime Minister would go. Administration would come, administration would go. But institutions is what creates a level of continuity in the society, what keeps the society stable. So the building trades institutions, the institutions of government responsible for capital projects has not just failed the NDC administration, has not just failed Deacon Mitchell, but has failed Grenada. Because if these institutions were functioning properly, if these institutions were strongly embedded in Grenada, guess what? When that design plan passed through whatever ministry is responsible for reviewing it, some senior person within that ministry or within the review department should look at it and say, no, you see this? This is not going to work. This needs to be revamped. Or whoever in these ministries who would have gone out to the site, as soon as they got there, they would have seen and said, no. The means and methods being used here are dangerous. We need to do some temporary shoring. So these institutions have failed. So there is collective responsibility what happened here. And the disgrace is not just the administration. It's not just the Prime Minister. It is the entire system. And I know, and I also heard, there's another aspect of this. It's floating around. There's a talk of much arrogance within the administration. You know, there's a talk of much arrogance in terms of responses when people make suggestions. So if that is the case, that is something that has to change. That is something that has to be pivoted away from, because we see the deadly consequences that are possible when proper advice is not heeded to. I mean, look at it in the social media space. I have said things that were valuable, that if they had been adopted, would have actually prevented a lot of the situations that we are experiencing right now. But everybody says that they're so social media savvy. They said this administration is always on social media. How come you didn't see what I said about this situation? How come you didn't think that it was wise enough to implement what I said? I don't care whether you implement it or not. My concern again comes from a place of love, from a place of not wanting to see things like these happen. So you also have to take into consideration, who are the people advising you? Who are the people who are doing the work for you? Are they competent? Are they capable? What have they done before? Are you hiring the right people for the jobs? Do they have the right skill set? If a guy comes to you and says, oh, he's an architect or he's an engineer, what type of engineer is he? Just like there's areas of specialization in medicine, just like there's areas of specialization in law. You have a corporate lawyer, you have a criminal defense attorney. I mean, there's areas of specialization. I'm not going to take a real estate guy to defend me in a criminal case. If I have a specific medical issue, gastroenterology issue, I'm not going to take, let's say, a general family practitioner to take care of that. If there's a heart issue, I'm not going to take a general family practitioner to take care of that. I'm going to consult with a specialist in heart. I'm going to consult with a cardiologist, right? It's the same thing with engineering. These types of projects, I said it before on the Molinhead project. These types of projects, retaining wall, earth systems, require geostructural engineers. That is the people with the skill set to handle this sort of stuff. So I'm not going to take a guy who says that he's a building structural engineer and put him in a project like that. No way. This requires a specific skill set. So somebody has got to educate the administration on who they hire and who is capable of doing certain things. You have to look to what they've done before. You have to look at their level of experience. Are they familiar with the things that they're about to embark on? This is simple. And again, of course, people are going to give you flack if you don't show good and proper judgment when you hire people to get your projects done. Because when it fails miserably, guess who's going to be blamed? Nobody else to blame, but they're going to say you didn't hire the right people. And for all of you looking at and, putting all the flack on the Prime Minister and putting all the flack on the NDC administration, you should be ashamed of yourself, because you within these institutions, you are part and parcel of the problem and what took place there. You're responsible also. So you cannot dissociate yourself from what happened there. And also, the NNP administration, seeing what's taken place, should have said more about this than they did. They should have pointed to this. I did my civic duty. I did my civic duty. I made sure weeks ago, okay? I thoroughly spoke about that. I thoroughly said the dangers involved and in what direction this was headed. But to no avail, because no one saw it within themselves to bring this to the attention of the right people so that some sort of mitigation can take place, and all of this that's happening could have been avoided. All of this money wasted could have been avoided. This could have led to someone losing their life. Someone could have been passing with that vehicle when there was a sudden collapse. That was possible. So there is no winners here. There's none to be joyful about. There's none to punks on here. We understand. We know. The people who are doing this obviously do not know what they're doing. The administration does not have experience in handling this. So the question is, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do to salvage the situation? What are you going to do going forward so that something like that doesn't happen again? This should be the focus. Solutions. In diesem Sinne, einen schönen Tag.